Nathan from Harrison Audio here, and today we'll be checking out the new Harrison 32 Classic Channel Strip plugin. Emulating the Harrison 32 Classic analog mixing console, the 32 Classic Channel Strip plugin delivers a sound and workflow that generations of artists and engineers have trusted to help craft their sound. Whether it was Michael Jackson, John Coltrane, and Diana Ross of Westlake Studios, ABBA, Led Zeppelin, and Adam Ant at Polar Studios in Stockholm, or Kenny Rogers, Johnny Cash, and Al Green at Sound Emporium right here in Nashville, Tennessee. The 32 Series console helped create some of the most influential music ever made. And now with the 32 Classic plugin, you can access the sound and workflow in your DAW that engineers like Bruce Bodine, Roger Nichols, and Reinhold Mack trusted to make music that stands the test of time. Regarded in many high-end studios as the sonic benchmark, Harrison Studio consoles are known for their super smooth and musical EQ, legendary filters, and intuitive get-the-job-done workflow. Capturing Harrison's classic sound, the 32 Classic plugin features a new control for dialing in warm, harmonic saturation based on the console's JT-MB-CPCA Jensen transformer coupled mic pre, and the 32 Classic boasts an EQ section with updated algorithm and full dynamics processing, offering 3 distinct compression modes and emphasis knob to access more vintage character. So let's take an in-depth look at the plugin and hear how it sounds. At the top of the plugin here, we have the input and output section of the channel strip for gain staging. We also have the drive control based on the 32 Classic console Jensen transformer coupled mic pre. This is great for adding warmth and saturation to your sounds. Over here on the left, we have a gate section on the channel strip, and this is a powerful, fully featured gate expander that can be used to effectively tame any bleed in your tracks or add more expression, dynamic articulation to your sound. In the center, we have the compressor section. This is a fully featured compressor that provides all the sound and control that you'd expect from a standalone classic compressor. It features 3 modes: level, comp, and limit. The comp mode is the most traditional sounding compressor type and is incredibly versatile with full control over ratio, attack, and release. This mode sounds great on almost any source, very much like a VCA compressor. The level mode is a subtle leveling compressor renowned for its smoothing capabilities. This would commonly be used on lead vocals, bass, and guitars with a low ratio and a small gain reduction range for taming dynamics in a natural way. Very similar to how you would use a 2A style compressor. Finally, the limit mode is a fast-acting aggressive compressor originally designed for the use in broadcast scenarios. This mode is ideal for slamming drums, crushing room mics, parallel vocal processing, bass, and more. This mode is like your 76 style compressor. And this section here on the right is a 32 Classic EQ. This is a 4-band parametric EQ with a proportional Q. It's a very versatile and musical EQ that sounds great on all sources. And you can switch between shelf and bell modes on the high and low bands, and use the overlapping mid bands to carve out your classic sound. Heavily inspired by the EQ on the 32 Classic console and the original Harrison 3232 consoles from the 70s, this EQ was designed to give you the smooth, natural Harrison sound that made its way onto so many classic records. Just below the EQ, we also have the iconic Harrison high pass and low pass filters that this plugin wouldn't be complete without. These filters have an ultra-wide range from extreme to subtle, and the filters have a musical 12 dB per octave slope, with the high-pass filter featuring a 3 dB resonant peak. The high-pass filter range is 25 Hz to 3.1 kHz, and the low-pass filter range is 160 Hz to 20 kHz. These filters can be used in combination with the EQ section, a technique used by many engineers on the original 3232 consoles. Finally, at the bottom of the plugin, we have the routing section that can be used to rearrange the processing order of the gate, compressor, and the EQ depending on your source material and how creative you want to get. For example, you may want to EQ before compressing to remove any unwanted frequencies before applying compression. Now that we've explored the plugin features, let's have a listen to the sounds. Okay, so looking at the gate section here, we have a kick drum with a little bit of bleed from the snare and a tom fill. So let's see what we can do to cut out this sound. So here's the plugin with everything off. Okay, so we definitely have some snare and cymbal bleed coming through. Now let's turn on the gate to cut out some of the bleed. Okay, so you no longer hear the cymbal ringing out. And as low as that is in the noise floor, you won't hear that in the full drum mix. So here's the drums all by itself. Okay, and speaking of full drums, we now have this on the drum bus. So let's go ahead and do some processing on the compression and the EQ to see what we can do for our drums. So the first thing I want to do is actually turn on the drive knob and see what kind of grit we can get out of the sound. So here it is with it off. And here it is with it on. Okay, now you can drive this up all the way up to 24 dB, which is going to be a lot. So just use your ears and creativity to determine the best sound for your song. Okay, and for me, I'm just going to keep it at 0 dB because it's already hitting at that -6. And I don't really want to go into the yellow up to 0 or even +6, which is going to be way too much. So let's just keep it right in the middle and then turn it on and off to hear the difference. So once again, here it is with it off. So to my ears, the low end just got a little bit bigger and the top end is a little more present. So I'm going to stick with that drive setting, and now let's move on to the compressor. So the first mode I'm dealing with is the level mode. And this is the least aggressive, most transparent compressor that we have in the plugin and also in the DAW. And what you're getting with this is a lot of gain reduction without a lot of pumping or artifacts. So you can really bring down the threshold slider and get a very transparent sound. But for this particular drum, we already have a lot of punch. So I probably just want to knock off the top part of the transient. And you can also adjust your release time to make the gain reduction bounce with the music. Maybe bring up the gain a little bit. Okay, now the emphasis knob is something that you'll see on an old LA2A. And what this knob does is change the frequency at which you're pushing into the compressor. So with the emphasis more on the left, you're compressing the low end. And with the emphasis on the right, you're pushing more high end into the compressor. So we can demonstrate that now. So notice when I have it on the 12K setting, the high end of the cymbals kind of get knocked down a little bit more than the kick drum was. So I'm locking the sound of the compressor, and let's move on to the EQ. So let's check out the filters first. And as you can see, the filters are so wide that they actually cancel out the sound when you cross them over. So at this point, I'm going to roll off a little bit of low end up to 40 Hertz. And just knock off a little bit of the top end to about 17K. And we know when you're mixing a song that any subtle change like this will make a huge difference once you start filtering out your other tracks like bass, acoustic, electric, and vocal. So now let's check out the high and low shelves. Let's boost the high shelf up to about 3 dB. And we'll start the shelf off about 6K. So we're really just adding some brightness to the overall cymbals. Now let's do the same thing for the low end. We'll boost about 3 dB and set it around 100 Hertz. Here's with the EQ off. And EQ on. So all the classic elements you need to process the signal of any track is all right here within the plugin. Let's move on to acoustic guitar. So once again, let's start with the plugin off, and here's the acoustic guitar. So we have a nice even strumming pattern with lots of peaks. Let's see what the compressor can do on this. And once again, let's use the level mode. Okay, so I'm knocking off about 4 dB of gain reduction, so I'm bringing the makeup gain back up about 3 dB. Here it is with the compressor off. Okay, that's just going to make for a smoother performance overall and have the acoustic sit better in the full mix. Let's go ahead and do some EQing as well. Let's start off with the high pass filter. Okay, this is pretty interesting too, because in the full mix, you don't really need tons of low end on your guitars, and you'd be surprised with how much you can actually get away with on your settings. So cutting out about 250 Hertz on your acoustic will make it more of a percussive sound in the mix versus a full body type sound. And we can also utilize the high mid-band EQ to bring out some of the pick attack. About right there, about 4K or so. And one last thing, let's dial in a little bit of drive to see if we can add some weight and body to the sound. Okay, so from experience, I can see that that -6 and -0 area is really where you're starting to add more grit to the sound, and you may not want to push any more into that based on the sound you're going for. So for this one, once again, I'm going to keep it around that 1, maybe 2 dB of push. So here's with the plugin off. Nice and clean. And plugin on. Cool, so we've added some saturation, we've added a little bit of EQ and compression, and now let's move on to the vocal.
Nothing on this highway but signs and lines, and too much time to think of you.
Okay, so based off of this vocal, we already have a good amount of saturation that came probably from the mic pre itself. Let's go ahead and dial out a little bit of low end.
Nothing on this highway but signs and lines, and too much time to think of you. Nothing on this highway but signs and lines, and too much time to think of you. Nothing on this highway but signs and lines, and too much time to think of you.
Let's go ahead and add some compression.
Nothing on this highway but signs and lines, and too much time to think of you. Nothing on this highway but signs and lines, and too much time to think of you.
Okay, so here's with the plug-in off.
Nothing on this highway but signs and lines, and too much time to think of you.
And the plug-in on.
Nothing on this highway but signs and lines, and too much time to think of you.
Alright guys, thanks for checking out the 32 Classic channel strip from Harrison Audio. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below and check out the website for more information. Until next time, I'm Nathan from Harrison Audio, and I'll see you in the next video.